most of the stuff we talk about isn't really that controversial. It's just like laying out information.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess people will probably be offended about the 9/11 one, but it's like, would you rather believe that like 19 people from Saudi Arabia just took down 2 towers and hit like up the Pentagon?
No, for real. I was thinking about that too. Like I didn't think we really said anything controversial in that 9/11 podcast, but also like we said a lot of things that were just not like to the narrative, and also like we didn't really name drop anyone. But I mean, I guess we could like Larry, so we kind of did, but also I don't know.
I feel like everyone knows about him.
I don't know.
Well, I guess I don't think that his name means too much.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like you're just pulling something out that people couldn't figure out on their own.
Yeah.
I think that's when you start getting yourself into some pickles, is when you're pulling out names of people that like, you'd really have to do a deep dive in to figure out how they were connected.
No, for real. Okay, I think I've got everything set up here. So. Alright, well, welcome back to our 10 viewers. Hopefully you learned a lot from the first episode. We're going to be talking about MK Ultra today. I'm your co-host, Caleb, and I guess our last names are on the screen. Alright, well, I'm Caleb Kelm, and here's my co-host, Simon Heller. Maybe we can just bleep that out or something. I don't know. But
yeah.
I guess let's just talk a bit about like what we're actually talking about and why we're talking about it. So we decided to talk about conspiracy theories, and not exclusively conspiracy theories, as we'll kind of see today. MK Ultra was a government program, and back in its time, if you were talking about this in the late 50s and 60s, you would have been called a conspiracy theorist, or you probably something worse. You would have been called crazy. Like, the things that happened just don't sound real. They sound like a movie. So if you were kind of questioning these things, especially back then, you were crazy. So we'll kind of be talking about MK Ultra today, and with the podcast in general, I think one of our main goals is to just talk about things that we feel are relevant to our like current situation. There's a lot of like media and news that we're shown every day, and it's so hard to filter it out. And a lot of things that we're told in the news and media, and even like history classes, is sometimes not true, even like just straight up not true. Like we're lied to so much in the media, whether it's from Twitter or anything. We're lied to like all the time. And I think one of the things that we want to do is try to just discern what the truth is. And that's such a hard thing to do. I don't know. We're going to do our best. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that. I think that's one of our main goals, is to just talk about things, whether they're conspiracies or not, things that have inconsistencies and things that we feel are just interesting to share with everyone. So I don't know if
I think the main goal is just to provide a different perspective, because all stories have different sides to them. And if you're only reading one story from one source, you won't truly understand it. But if you're formulating your own opinion or how the story actually happened from different sources, you're probably going to get a little bit of information that conflicts, or a lot. But at the end of the day, you'll likely have a better understanding of, for in our case today, mind control experiments, MK Ultra. And that's pretty much our goal. At least my goal is just to provide a different perspective and let people know that questioning things is okay, and it's actually one of the more important things you can do in your life. Keeps your brain functioning well, keeps your mind creative, things like that.
It's, yeah, if you don't, if you don't question yourself, you're not like challenging yourself, and you're just being like lazy. I feel like if you don't, it doesn't even have to be questioning yourself. If you question anything, you are thinking more, and whether you're whether you're doing it in the right way, sometimes it's like a bad thing to question everything. I feel like we'll talk a bit about Alex Jones later this episode too. Maybe this will be 2 episodes depending on how long we go. But I feel like if you do question everything, you become like an Alex Jones figure, and then you're all over the place. And if you're like a viewer of Alex Jones, and if you believe everything he says and everything his people say, like you're out of touch with reality. Like, there are true things that he says and some things that are useful, but for the majority, I feel like it's just all kind of garbage.
Well, I'd say if you comment or question too many, like, you can even question almost anything, but if you make that your entire focus is like every different issue, it almost becomes a little schizophrenic.
Yes.
With your, like, if you have a few issues that you question and you question them strongly, I think that's really healthy. But if you're questioning every single thing, I think it almost fractures your mind in a way where now you don't even trust things that you're seeing in front of you and are reality, because everything in your mind has been trained to just question and mistrust. But I think for someone like Alex Jones, it really creates this lack of credibility when you do question certain things that you don't know about as much. Whereas if you have all the information and you're still questioning it, that's healthy. But for his listeners, what I'd say is a problem with conspiracy theorists and people who listen to them is that you almost start seeing them as a source of only true information. And when you do that, you're completely withdrawing yourself from any of your own responsibility to question these things on your own and formulate your own opinions. So it might start out as like a healthy, I'm starting to see things in a light that I didn't see before. But once you start listening to that same person on a daily basis, you start creating that habit in your mind where they're almost like a god figure with what they say has to be true. And anyone who questions them is wrong. And you don't use your own mind to delve into information as much anymore because you're just only intaking it from one person. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's right, 100%. And it's not even, it doesn't even have to be a single person. Like, it could be Fox News, it could be CNN, it could be anything. Like, if you're only looking at one thing and you're consistently looking at it, that's the only source of truth for you. And if you're not questioning it, you're just going to take everything for face value. You were talking about how, like, Alex's viewers, and how they're how they only focus on him, and how like if you only have that one person, they are like a god figure. And I feel like Alex's like mannerisms and his whole website, his whole Infowars and Band.video website, it just feeds into and grows. Like it's like a seed if it's like gets planted inside of you. Like when you start listening to it more and more, he like traps you. It's cliffhangers after cliffhangers, and everything he says will just point to, it almost like forces you to listen to it more, and then he'll try to sell you pills. So but it's like that's the easy thing to do. Like I feel like it's hard to have different sources of information like constantly. It's hard to draw from different sources all the time, especially when they're polar opposites. Like Alex Jones is not going to be saying, or agreeing with anything that's in almost any mainstream like media source. So how do you decide what's true when they're saying the exact opposite thing, but they each all have what seems like credible like sources? I don't know. It's just confusing sometimes.
Yeah. So do you want to start talking about him
Oh,
right away, or do you want
Um,
to?
why why don't we just continue talking about him, and then I guess we'll talk about MK Ultra. We'll talk about it later.
Okay,
Um,
sounds good.
why don't we? So I'll call you the Alex Jones specialist. You've probably, especially out of everyone I know, you've probably like researched him or at least listened to him the most. Um, do you just like off the bat? Do you think he actually believes what he's saying, or yeah? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'd say he definitely believes what he's saying, and I think the problem with him is he has so many strong opinions, and sometimes he's giving you a very strong opinion about something that he might not be quite as familiar with as he ought to be to have that strong opinion. But
Mm-hmm.
I kind of just like to start with the Alex Jones story from beginning to end, because if you don't understand that, I don't think you'll understand the figure and the persona that Alex Jones truly is, where you have all of his super dedicated listeners who genuinely think that he's telling the truth constantly
Mm-hmm.
and basically feed off of his information as though it's water in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the entirety of mainstream media, which demonizes him and celebrates the fact that he's now having to pay 900 billion plus dollars
Right.
for questioning an event, whereas there's many other people who did the same and simply had to retract their statements.
Yeah.
So the start of the Alex Jones story, I think it's about 1997 to 98. He went to community college, and he essentially just decided, these people are trying to indoctrinate me, and I don't believe what they're saying, and it doesn't really match up with the reality that I see every single day. So after he dropped out of community college, he started working for a local cable news station as like a nightly broadcaster. So he was like extremely low level to begin with.
Hmm.
And one interesting thing that I actually learned was that he started off doing this cable news program, and people in Austin, Texas, where he's from, actually would like smoke weed and then listen to him because they thought everything he was saying was so esoteric
Jeez.
and out there and just something that most people wouldn't be willing to say. But from that, his main points, I guess you could say, he sets up a storyline, but the overarching story is the fact that there's this secretive group controlling things behind the scenes, and he calls them both the New World Order collectively and the
The
globalists
globalists.
individually. So essentially, what he's saying is you're getting some lip service when you're watching TV and you're seeing politicians, but there's really an overarching plan to create this one world government, and there's certain organizations and families and individuals that are at the head of these groups. And a lot of these people, you don't even know their names
Mm-hmm.
because they have the public face, which I guess you could say the public face would be certain prime ministers and presidents throughout the world, Rockefellers, Rothschilds, those sort of people who have a lot of power, money, and influence. But at the end of the day, he even believes that there's a group beyond them, more powerful, more wealthy. But what I believe that he says is true is true power and true wealth doesn't want to be seen. So they have their essentially what you would call minions out there trying to formulate this world government.
Mm-hmm.
And from this is basically how he started off on his cable news program. He probably had, a few thousand listeners nightly and continued to grow. And eventually he extended off from the cable news program and started his own company called InfoWars, which I I'm pretty sure he's been running for over 20 years now.
I think it's
And
been a long time.
yeah, it's been quite a while. And he started off by questioning events like 9/11, like we talked about in our first episode. One thing that he was really strongly against was like government surveillance of citizens through the Patriot Act and other events, especially ones in Texas like Waco.
Mm-hmm.
He was on the ground floor questioning things. And Alex Jones actually didn't start off as this right-wing extremist that everyone kind of knows him to be now, which now it's likely due to the fact that he's really hardcore in support of Trump and holds on to Trump as though he's the leader of this anti-globalist movement to save sovereign nations and prevent them from just morphing into this global hegemony, one country basically in the entire world thing. So what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna comment on one of my biggest issues I have with him is, so he talks about, and to an extent he is right about a lot of these families who just have a lot of money, and like they'll buy like the Washington Post or whatever, like people who have a lot of money, and they're able to use it for some sort of power. The issue that I have with him is he believes that there's these people that we can't name and we won't know these names. And that's what I feel like attracts his audiences so much, is there's this like secrecy to, there's these people that we don't know and we can't name them. And then that gives him the ability to just never truly give you the names of people that are wronging us in all these situations. But we're not able to put a name to the face. But that's what he just keeps drawing back to. So he'll never, and he's able to never put a name out there, and he'll still get the viewers because of that. Like, that's one of the biggest issues I have with him, is he's just not able to really prove any of like those higher powers, which is pretty foundational to, I feel like what he believes is the whole interconnected system of these people and their just ability to manipulate everything that we see. And that's kind of what he truly believes in. But it's just difficult when you can't put a name to that face.
Yeah. And I think it's a lot easier in hindsight to look back at the people who were doing it in the past. Like, you can go through the names of these people, like Andrew Carnegie, the Carnegie Foundation, John D. Rockefeller, Rothschilds, all of these people. So in hindsight, you actually can see, that either highest group or second highest group that is truly and undoubtedly pushing for this globalization of the world, whether successfully or unsuccessfully. But when you're in the present, you have new generations and new people, and most of the time, actually, with successful and wealthy people, their kids aren't as capable and sometimes just not motivated to carry on their initial mission. So it's almost as though those names could honestly be changing, and you just don't know who the new players in the system are.
Interesting.
So a little bit of a defense for him on that, but I will give you the fact that there's always that cliffhanger where it's like, I have the documents, white papers, secrecy, things like that.
Yeah.
But I kind of want to get into a little bit more of just how he became the polarizing figure that he is now, because in the past, he actually got arrested for heckling George Bush when he was running for governor of Texas. Yeah. And there's a whole video of him getting pinned up against a glass wall and getting taken away and all of these things. So people nowadays see him as this guy who's super right-wing and just, anti everything left wing. But in the past, he was equally criticizing and even getting arrested, going against both sides of the system.
I think there's this story of like him. It was him and somebody else. He was wearing a Bush mask, and I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that's him and Joe
Rogan. That's right. Yeah, he was wearing a Bush mask, and I don't know, whatever. But they were in Texas somewhere, and it's so opposite to what today. Everyone only thinks of him as like a far right dude, but I don't know. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I think there was because there was a while, and I've listened to a lot of his older episodes. You can actually still find some of them on YouTube if you use DuckDuckGo and have really strong keywords that you're searching.
Mm-hmm.
So I would, when I worked outside in summer, I'd be landscaping for 10 to 12 hours a day, and I'd need something to listen to because my brain just needs,
Yeah.
I guess you could call it stimulation,
Yeah.
but creativity more than anything, because he does present a storyline that is compelling at certain points,
It's entertaining.
but at the end of the day, it's entertaining.
Yeah.
Your mind needs to work, especially if you're not like looking at him speaking. Your mind still has the ability to work while he's talking.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like there was the first 10, 15 years of InfoWars where Alex Jones was this criticism of government, no matter who's in control, criticizing the genetically modified food, criticizing aerosol injections into the sky to manipulate the weather. And it was a lot of really interesting topics that only listeners who had high IQs and were willing to question things would tune into, because other people, they genuinely do just want to be fed information from Fox News or CNN. And that's the life that they're happy to live, and that's okay.
I think there's a
but
lot.
Alex Jones,
You keep going. Yeah.
yeah. His listeners for those 10 to 15 years, because he always has phone calls, and you can tell that he's not paying the people to call in, because every once in a while there's just this 1-2 calls every day where they just rip him to shreds. And
Yeah.
sometimes he takes it, and other times he shuts them down.
Mm-hmm.
But his callers would call in and organically be feeding him more and more information and playing off of the ideas and stories that he was already showing, and giving real life examples of how they were recognized it in their own lives and their own communities.
Yeah.
So
I think
then-
that's just dirt. That might just be crazy people though that are just reinforcing the ideas that they just keep hearing.
But you can kind of tell when someone's crazy and when
Yeah.
someone genuinely cares and has a certain level of intelligence that allows them to dive deeper into these things. And I'm just saying, for those 10 to 15 years, his callers were incredibly smart.
Here's that.
And
Okay. I just want to comment on that. So I'm writing a paper about kind of this topic, and there was a study on social media and conspiracy theories, and it looked specifically at like right-wing supporters and their beliefs on conspiracy theories, and they like hypothesized that, you know, these people are going to be dumb and crazy and they were going to have no real knowledge of politics, and they found the exact opposite, where, and it's so kind of strange, but these people knew what was going on in politics, they knew how these systems worked, and they weren't dumb, but they just were very believable in these conspiracy theories. So I guess that kind of makes sense, especially if you're going to call into a show like if you're going to call in the Alex Jones show, you're probably going to have something to say. And I don't know, I feel like you could be super intelligent, but at the same time, like, you can be so misled by somebody who just knows how to talk well. And I feel like that's just the case most of the times.
Yeah, I was going to end up agreeing with you on that point too, because those first 15 years of InfoWars, it seemed like he was actively and equally just going against the government, trying to promote organic food, trying to do all these things, harm the public so that they're more safe, you know, just basically in his own way help his listeners to be healthier. And then comes Donald Trump into the political sphere. And if you listen to some of Trump's early speeches, he was talking about the globalists and how we needed to maintain the sovereignty of the United States, and questioning certain events like 9/11, or just, you know, doing his little tweets where he would also give cliffhangers. But he was like basically the first conspiracy theorist candidate that actually caught traction, obviously, by the time he became president. And Alex Jones, I think, I don't know whether this is true, but it was almost as though he had become so exhausted from being the head conspiracy theorist leader of the entire movement and he just latched on to Donald Trump, even though Donald Trump wasn't agreeing with everything he said, and
Yeah,
he wasn't
interesting.
being so active
It was just
in
easy for him to do that, though.
yes. So he would give you bits and pieces of conspiracies and question certain things without going into too much detail. So Alex
Yeah,
Jones, I think, saw that
they
and
told
immediately was like,
he totally played into that too. I remember when I would listen to him, it was during like the Trump presidency, and he would always talk about like I'm talking with the president and all of this.
"Yep,
Like that is very true. I bet he totally just kind of piggybacked off of Trump because Trump was a huge wave, right? Like
uh-huh.
all of his supporters, and dude, I'm sure Alex got so many more viewers just from
Mhm.
Trump, and I guarantee those also just boosted his sales and everything. And so that encouraged him even more to just continue to play into the Trump narrative because
Mhm.
they were supporting him, and it was reinforcing his ideas. He's seen all these people are now supporting and they're buying all his products, and because he really stepped his game up. Like if you watch videos of his ads and stuff from back then, they're pretty similar to what he does now, but he's really on like another sort of level when he's like trying, I feel, when he's just manipulating people. I don't know.
Yeah," which would make sense because if all of that funding came in, he would be able to hire more people. All of the
Mm-hmm.
graphics would get stronger. Everything
Exactly.
would just become more
Look
attractive
at
to
his
watch and
whole
listen to.
setup. Exactly. It's so it looks official, right? It gives him credibility. That
Yep.
big ass table with those screens behind him, that literally gives him credibility for whatever he's gonna say. Like, look at us right
Yeah.
now, dude. We don't have, bro. Could you
I'm not
imagine?
even on screen.
Exactly, dude. Imagine if we were. Imagine if we were in Alex Jones, like we're sitting at his table. We've got all the people we need. They're doing research for him as well. Like it's it's just feeding into this whole system, and that's just Infowars.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then you'll see like his backgrounds behind him. He'll have huge screens up, and I think it gets into a little bit of the mind control aspect that we're probably
No,
going to talk about
it
later.
totally does.
Because those images, like they're pretty captivating.
Yes.
It'll just be smoke or a nice sunset or overhead shot of Washington D.C. or the White House,
Or like
and it's so
mug
clear and
shots.
coherent.
I
Yeah.
was I was watching one today, and it was probably like a 2013 episode, so it was probably like 10 years old, and he literally just had like a box TV behind him
Yep.
that was just
Mhm.
rotating images, and it was like, here's a map of the Middle East, and it's got like X's on it, but you can't even tell what it's doing, and it has nothing to do what he's talking about. And then it's like mug shots, and it still has nothing to do what he's talking about, but it's just, you're like, if you're not interested with what he's talking about, you're going to be looking at that, and you're still just going to be connected with him regardless of if you're even digesting the shit he's saying. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's like he had a really pure motive for those 15 years. Trump walks in, he gets all this funding. It reinforces his mindset that, hey, I'm going to have to latch onto this guy because whether he knows it or not, I'm making money off of him, which is a smart business decision on his part. But I
Mhm.
think he lost his path from where he was genuinely criticizing and questioning things, trying to help his viewers understand the world in a way that could make sense. Because when you don't understand the world and you're getting all of this information that you believe to be true, but it just doesn't add up in reality, your mind might not recognize it, but it does affect your life. So I think his goals, those 15 years, were fairly pure. And then once Trump reinforced his money mindset, I think he got drunk on the power that he had with more listeners,
Mhm.
and maybe literally drunk too. But
No, he definitely was. Yeah, like
yeah, yeah. And then also just when he realized how much money he was pulling in, it was as though I either have to expand or I have to go back to the simpler conspiracy theory,
yeah,
pure motives that he had in the past. Because
yeah,
now, if you listen to what he talks about, he'll like vaguely or occasionally bring up the topics that he used to. Like 5G,
Yeah,
or
that's yeah.
cloud seeding for weather manipulation, or how bad genetically modified food is for you,
Hmm.
putting chemicals in the water,
Right.
fluoride, things like that. And now it's like as though he's a political talk show host, which in the
Yeah.
past he was a conspiracy theorist.
Yes. Yeah.
And
That's
people still, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
people still call him a conspiracy theorist, but I don't really see him that way as much anymore. I
Yeah.
see him more as a political talk show host, because he genuinely used to not believe in the American voting system,
Mhm.
which you can evidence in his questioning of the 2020 election.
Mhm.
But he still tells people to vote. He says we need to get people back in office, all of these things.
Yeah.
Whereas in the
That's
past, it was as though
contradicting.
he knew in the past that there is no way to fix the system from the inside.
Yeah.
And now he believes there is. And I think it's all because of Donald Trump, and he latched his horse to that wagon.
Yeah, so he that honestly would make sense. Like the first and I kind of agree with you earlier, um, that he probably does believe almost everything he says. There's definitely times where he I probably don't believe he even believes what he's saying. He's just probably saying it for buzzwords or for clicks or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
if he's like that first 10 to 15 years of trying to grow his show and like get an audience, he definitely has to be 100% like dedicated to everything he's saying. So he I can totally see how he's just fully into that. He believes it, and then Trump comes and he realizes that he's got to probably change something about his show, where he either just continues that narrative or he latches on to Trump now and he rides this wave of I feel like it's just he's almost riding the wave of the two-party system now. Like
Yep.
he definitely wasn't way back then. He was just we
Mm-hmm.
talked about this earlier. He was against both sides. But now he doesn't endorse. I feel like he doesn't endorse the right as much as like we are told, but he definitely like is compliant with the right a lot more than the left. He just definitely plays into the whole he plays into Trump like characters. He uses the buzzwords that makes people listen to him. It's the cliffhangers. It's all of that, and it's like it's almost like I feel he's transitioning to like Fox News. Like I hear him, and then I also hear Tucker Carlson, and they sound
Mm-hmm.
very similar. I haven't heard news about Tucker Carlson in a long time, but like a while ago, they just the language that they were using, and like their style of like fear and shock. It was just very similar, and
Mm-hmm.
it's it's so weird because that's not a conspiracy theorist, right? That's a total. I agree. He's totally like a political news figure now. He's not really. He's not even really a journalist. I feel like maybe like
Mm-hmm.
definitely not like an investigative. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with your points about Tucker. It seems like Tucker's 3 months behind Alex Jones, but once it hits those 3 months, he's saying almost the same things that Alex Jones was saying
Mhm.
3 months earlier.
Mhm.
And like you were saying, fear is what sells for them now.
Totally.
Because in the past, fear sold in a way, but it was also Alex Jones providing solutions to the problems that did rightfully strike fear into people, but the solutions were always there. Now the solutions aren't there, the fear still is, and the fear is what's selling.
Totally.
Which does make sense from a business perspective, but it makes you question the morality and dedication to actually solving problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember like probably a year or two ago when COVID was happening. He was playing into the whole like, uh, the world's gonna shut down. You need these survival kits and all these like dried foods and all that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it was totally fear motivated. Everything he would talk about would just point to like civilization is just gonna fall. And I was in an Uber with my Uber driver like 2 weeks ago. I forget who he was talking to. Somebody who he told me to go on Rumble, and as soon as he said Rumble, I was like, this dude's probably crazy. But he was telling me how like the world's gonna shut down in 10 days, and all the cell phones are gonna shut down, and it's like these people. That's not gonna happen. These people are just they're driven by fear, right? Everything that they just keep reinforcing themselves. And yeah, we've talked about that, but yeah.
Yeah, well, when you are in a fear mindset, there's actually a chemical released into your brain. And the chemical in your brain is addictive. So you want more and more of it, even though, like, technically being in a fear state is very unhealthy for you. Your brain feels like it needs it more and more. And that's one reason why he is so successful, is because it does sell.
Totally.
And like you were saying about Tucker, if you go and look at Tucker Carlson's YouTube titles after he does a show, they'll post his stuff to YouTube. Every single title is either a cliffhanger or it's striking as much fear into you as possible before even watching the video, that you have to click on it.
Exactly. Alex does the same thing. And not even, like, all of InfoWars does the whole, you have to do that. If you work for Alex, you have to do that. The guy with the David Knight guy that I was watching today, I don't even think we're going to get to MK Ultra. I don't know. We just, anyways, he was talking about MK Ultra, and he goes, I'm going to tell you about what they're doing today that mimics those MK Ultra programs, right? And then the music cued and the camera started panning out, and it just cut to an Alex Jones ad, and it was like, you really are just, it's all cliffhangers, and it's painfully obvious to listen to, but it's so hard just not to listen to it, because most of the time they eventually will get to it, and it's a lot of the time something you already knew, or it never really answers the question. So his answer to the current programs that MK Ultra, like the programs they're running today, his answer were just like, they're vaccines, and we have autism in our children, and no one's questioning these things, and that's the MK Ultra programs. And it's like, you really just wasted 10 minutes of my time to run an ad. It's like, what are we doing?
I'll give him a little bit of defense just because it's actually a radio show. So he does need to have like breaks every 5-10 minutes for commercials on the radio channels. Yeah. But it is also true that sometimes you can tell he's purposely having a cliffhanger, whereas other times he'll genuinely be in mid-conversation and then it just cuts out because you can't not have a commercial on a radio station because you're not even in control of it.
Right. Yeah.
But he's probably one of the most interesting people in America, I'd say.
Yeah, and it's strange now, right? Because he's being sued for $1 billion, and
isn't it 900 billion? Is it 900 million or?
Yeah, it's
900 million.
It's not. It's like 950 some million. Yeah. So it's strange because it almost like induces more fear. And I haven't listened to Alex like recently, but I assume ever since like these lawsuits started coming, like the fear just kept coming out into his audience. Like, I'm sure he played into that tremendously, but I don't know. I just don't think it's not constructive for anything, especially now. It's like, I don't even understand how he can give accurate information without having 50 different people working for him. He's got so much stuff he's running. They went into bankruptcy. He's losing $1 billion, and he's still trying to sell dick pills on his website. Like, I feel like his wave has ended now. He probably peaked like right before Trump, and financially he probably peaked during COVID, and now he's probably just trying to ride that wave out, but it's not going to last. It's just not going to last very much longer, I don't feel.
Yeah. One thing that I think it would be important to realize is there were a few. I think the first lawsuit that he had was actually in Texas, but it was still about Sandy Hook.
Mm-hmm.
And he was required to pay $54 million, somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
But Texas state law actually states that you can only pay
like $100,000 or something.
It's capped at like $750,000.
Oh yeah.
So based on the amount of people who were involved in the lawsuit, he was actually only legally allowed to pay like $3.5 million or something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's what I really struggle with, and maybe you can help me out with this a little bit, is a lot of people consider Alex Jones to be controlled opposition, where he's put there as a puppet, maybe even by the very people that Alex Jones is allegedly raging against and trying to expose as this group creating a global government.
Yeah.
And essentially what the reason why they put him out there is, in the people's minds who consider him to be controlled opposition, they say he's put out there to be a false and inorganic face of the true movement against this globalist government. But what I don't understand is this media and politicians, they're almost all against Alex Jones, and they degrade his name, they sue him.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't sue someone for $950 million
Yeah.
if he's on your team.
Yeah.
So how can he be this fake face of a movement that should truly be moving forward to keep sovereign nations, keep power with the people, not these upper level organizations and governmental groups, and also be literally the most demonized person by the group that he allegedly works for? How does that make sense?
I don't
You know
think
what I'm
it.
saying?
Yeah, I don't think it does. Like, he tries to he tries to put action to his word, I feel like, or at least he used to. Which, if he was controlled opposition, he would not have. I don't think he would have pushed like the January 6th stuff as much, and I feel like I don't think he's controlled opposition. It's just he's been doing this for way too long. I can't see it. I don't understand.
Here, let me help a little bit.
I don't understand why they would. Why would you create the Alex Jones figure if he's, I guess, to just spread misinformation? But what does that do?
The story is that Alex Jones was created as a persona and boosted up to the level that he's currently at, so that no real organic face of the movement can be made, because he's already there, he's top dog, and they don't have to worry about a thing because they know Alex Jones is Alex Jones.
Yeah.
And he's on their team. So in that way, like, it's a good idea if it's true.
Yeah. See,
so one thing that I'd like to just go over is January 6th. Alex Jones, called everyone there. And he claims, and it looks like it from the pictures that I've seen, that there were over 1 million people in Washington, D.C. to protest the election on January 6th. And then, after getting all these people there, whether he knew it or not, the Capitol is charged, and, well, I would say
he left, didn't he?
It would be more reasonable for them to get trespassing claims than anything else, rather than be rotting in a jail cell with no court date. Alex Jones got everyone there, but then during the event, Alex Jones didn't even go near the Capitol.
He just left.
He was on the outside telling people not to, actually, on his loudspeaker. Yeah, there's videos of him on the loudspeaker saying, "We need to be peaceful, don't go into the Capitol." Yeah, you can find the videos on his website for sure. So my point is, for them arguing against myself because I don't think that he's controlled opposition.
Yeah.
Arguing against myself, though, Alex Jones gets all of these people there.
Mm-hmm.
He, through the storming of the Capitol, or whatever you want to call it,
Mm-hmm.
now there were no more questions or legal opposition to the election itself. So he gets everyone there to question the election.
Mm-hmm.
The result of it is no one's allowed to anymore, and these people are in prison. And there's this overarching narrative that
Yeah.
Trump supporters, Alex Jones listeners are these horrible people who did January 6th.
Yeah.
But Alex Jones is on the outside, saving face, saying, this is peaceful, we need to be peaceful, don't go into the Capitol.
Yeah.
Is it possible that he knew from the start that that was going to happen, and he knew that he would have the liability shield of being the one knowing it and being on the outside actively stating that he wasn't a part of it in the moment? Or was that just organic and Alex Jones is actually a fairly decent person?
That's a great question. Just for real, I can't answer that honestly. I don't think I want to say he's just a great person, right? Like, but also how he had to have known all of their language during that time was like predicated on violence and storming the Capitol. Like, people flew across the country to get there, and you just expect them to stand outside and that's it. They're just gonna stand there, right? No, these people are crazy. These are like QAnon supporters. These people they've been manipulated like years prior, and I'm sure Trump was tweeting things of violence. I know Steven Crowder tweeted something like tomorrow is war or something like that, and I think it was before. Yeah, so it's like he had to have known that at least a small group of the people going there were going to be violent, whether they were going to storm the Capitol or just be violent with like people outside of the Capitol, anything. He had to have known something was going to happen, right? Like, but also, like, he couldn't have stopped it, right? Like, he didn't start that January 6th rally. He definitely helped. He definitely boosted it like crazy, but it was mainly just Trump, right? If I'm not mistaken, it was mainly Trump and
I think it was Trump and then just like various talk show hosts getting their listeners involved. Yeah. Because Trump was promoting.
Exactly.
It, yeah.
And I don't like, I have sympathy in that way, like he obviously did not, I don't feel he intended like specifically for his viewers to go there and try to kill people, but I just don't see how he could not have seen that happening.
Yeah, and which is interesting because I don't know that I've heard anyone call into his show and state that their family member who was a listener of the show or whatever got arrested. So it was almost like InfoWars people weren't the ones who were going into the building, and yet it still happened, and maybe he knew that. So either way, it's almost as though he has a little bit of a brighter side where maybe he just organically was on the outside saying, let's be peaceful, don't go into the Capitol. Or he had so much trust in his listeners to be a little bit higher IQ than everyone who was going in there. Mm-hmm. And
there's no way. There's no way he believes all of his viewers have like a high IQ, because he is playing into these like psychological, you're gonna buy my vitamins, all that stuff. Like he knows a good portion of his viewers are crazy people that are just listening to him to like reinforce everything. And there's also a good amount of his viewers that probably are pretty smart and they do question things and whatnot. But again, are those the people that are going to be going to the Capitol on January 6th? I don't think so. I have a feeling it's the ones who are working 9-to-5 jobs and listening to them all day, every day. Like, they're just continuing to listen. Like, they're not, like, I have a feeling most of them are just the crazy people. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
do you have any other questions?
I think I do, actually. Let me... Oh yeah, you were. Nah, it's more about MK Ultra. We've gone like an hour too, and I kind of want to cap this at like an hour. So, if you have anything else you want to talk about, Alex, I think we covered a good portion, honestly.
Yeah. So I guess what I would say is, if you want the full story of Alex Jones and you want the purity, it would be best to listen to his stuff from before 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that he comes around again and changes his mind about Trump. And because if you look at it objectively, Trump did more to hurt the right wing than he did to help it. Mm-hmm. And it's hard for a lot of people on the left wing to see that Donald Trump is basically a New York City Democrat and actually promoted more of their... There were certain things that he did that were pro-right wing, but Donald Trump confiscated more guns than and enacted more gun laws than Barack Hussein Obama did.
Did he really?
Yeah. And Barack Obama deported more illegal immigrants than Donald Trump did. And yet there's this narrative around Donald Trump that he's this far right-wing president that is so unbelievably against the left wing. Mm-hmm. Whereas that narrative, it seems like it was almost created to allow him to still act like that New York City Democrat he has been his entire life, funding Hillary Clinton's campaign in the past and then running against it. You know, all of these things that make you realize that Donald Trump isn't this right-wing conservative with traditional values. He's been married and divorced how many times? He cheated on his wife. All of these things.
He's also not an outsider like he continually claimed him to be. Like, no, dude.
And he ran on draining the swamp. He put Goldman Sachs members in his cabinet. It's like, so we're draining the swamp, but we're actually bringing more of them in. That makes no sense at all. So I guess basically what I'm trying to say is I think Alex Jones is mischaracterized quite a bit by the media. And I think he still has a speck of morality and value in him. Yeah. And I think he could turn it around again, but he's going to have to change quite a bit of the way that he does business to move back into the let's question everything, but let's not favor one side.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because he used to do that. His shows were interesting. His listeners seemed to be pretty high IQ, whereas now you listen to them and it's like, Alex Jones is my hero. He saved my life. All of these things.
Yeah.
Just wouldn't be said by someone who is a responsible, competent, strong individual who listens to a man who provides valuable information, interesting information, and is entertaining. Because now I'll check in on Alex Jones and I'll listen to him here and there. But I used to listen every day and now I don't.
Right.
I listen maybe once or twice a month just for some entertainment.
Exactly.
Check in, see how he's doing, see what he's talking about, things like that. And I think that, not to be too arrogant about myself, I'd say that I'm one of those listeners that would come back to listening on a more regular basis if he did change. But until he does, I think his listener base is going to continue to grow more and more lower IQ,
just brainwashed,
blindly trusting, things like that. And it's a good segue into our next episode about mind control and MK Ultra, because whether he's doing it on purpose or not, he does have these people in a grip that they can't really release themselves from. And he is doing it in a more moral manner where he's giving them the consent to press the button to listen every day, even though he's giving them cliffhangers, whereas MK Ultra was coerced and there was no words of affirmation from, I guess, what you would call patients.
Yeah. Yeah, there was no consent.
Treated like that.
Yeah.
So in a way, I think he's it's a good segue into that because there's the mind control that happens and people are consenting to, and there's mind control that happens and isn't consented to. And we're going to have a good episode next time talking about it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think also it's interesting how and I wonder if this is true, but I would assume that a lot of Alex's viewers from the earlier 2000s and like 2010s and whatnot, I wonder if they still are listening today, or if they kind of came to that realization too, where he did kind of just ride this wave of Trump and he stopped questioning everything and he started picking sides, which is contrary to what Alex started as, right? And it's almost like he played his own downfall. He grew his audience and he told all these people to continually question everything. And then eventually they're going to question Alex, right? If you keep hearing question everything, well, at some point you're probably going to question Alex. And when you see the inconsistencies that he has, you're just going to question him more. So, I don't know. It's interesting to see. I agree. His viewers are probably starting to get like lower IQ and more just like entertained by him, but they don't see the other side. They're entertained, but they believe that entertainment. Whereas I used to listen to Alex every once in a while too. Not nearly as much as like every day, but I'd fall asleep listening to him sometimes. And most of the time it was just like, wow, this dude is like, what is he even saying? Like, I don't even understand what he's talking about. And it's entertaining because he's so into it. And it's hard to escape that if you just fall into it and also believe what he's saying. But yeah. I think our next episode on MK Ultra, we really didn't get to any of it today. But yeah, that's a good segue to it. We'll have to we'll revisit it, and yeah, it'll be a good episode for sure. You know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, if you have anything else to say, I'm kind of all out here, so.
I'm pretty much good with what we said today. I think we covered a lot of bases, and people have a better understanding of who Alex Jones is without the constant obeying and trusting that you would get from someone who listens to him so often. And you'll get a perspective different from the Alex Jones is bad in every single way possible, and he shouldn't even be allowed to speak, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think we did a pretty good job, though.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I think we did a good history of him and whatnot. So, all right. Well, thank you again to our 5 viewers. Hope to hear back from you soon.